Hi everyone, I'm Kristen, the Cross Stitching Runner, and welcome to my channel. I want to say a big hello and welcome to all new and returning viewers. And if by chance you've stumbled across this channel is all about cross stitch with a bit of life stuff thrown in. And this is a special episode because it is part two of the WIPs parade that I did a couple of weeks ago, and I hope that you have seen that one and you've enjoyed what you have seen there and you have come back for more. So I'm going to pick up where I left off from last time and start getting into many of the WIPs that I've been working on for the majority of 2024 and continue to talk about ones that I want to hopefully keep working on well into next year of 2025. So let's get into it. Speaking of Tilton Crafts, the next piece that I have to share with you is called Halloween Treats 2. And this is roughly what it will look like when it's done. I am stitching this on the same fabric as Halloween Treats 1. And I learnt my lesson and started this one in the center. This is where I'm at so far. I'm stitching this one over one using all of the cord 4 threads. The next piece that I have to share with you is a Heaven and Earth Designs. It's called Shrooms, based on the artwork by John Shannon. This is roughly what it'll look like when it's done. I'm stitching this on 28 count black linen or even weave, black fabric. I have chosen to start this in the center of the fabric because there's a lot of black stitching for the edge or edges of the piece. So I wanted to start where the fun colors were. The next piece that I have to share with you is a variation of the Haid called Trick or Treat 2, based on artwork of Randall Spangler. This is roughly what it will look like when it's done. And I'm stitching this on what I believe to be 16 or 18 count Aida. This is where I'm at so far. This particular fabric I've had in my stash for ages, and I don't even remember where I got it from to know why it's pink or anything like that. Purchased it because it was pink. It was something out of the ordinary for a lot of the whites and beiges, greys that we normally see as standard colours available in the shops. The next piece that I have to share with you is, again, one of my own designs called I Count My Lucky Stars Every Day That You Are in My Life. Just before I show you all the details and such to do with I Count My Lucky Stars, I just want to acknowledge that my boyfriend has come home from fishing and such, so any background noises that you hear are him just doing his thing as part of coming back from fishing. So also I think it's probably perfect timing that I'm talking about a boyfriend coming back from fishing and talking about I count my lucky stars, because the quote of I count my lucky stars every day that you're in my life, I don't know where exactly I got that wording from, but it is a phrasing that I very strongly attribute to my boyfriend because I think he's just absolutely awesome and amazing, because he puts up with all of my quirks with such patience and grace, and there is very little in life, at least through my opinion of him, that seems to not fade, where he takes things in his stride amazingly well. I am just in absolute awe of him, and I could probably gush about him for quite some time, but I won't. With all of this in mind, though, this is the design. I count my lucky stars. And the hopefully, no, I've got it upside down. Okay, so this is where I'm at so far, and I stitched the quote in the, I think, Karen or Caron watercolors, Tequila Sunrise by memory, and I'm using the DMC thread of 3606 or 3806 or something very similar to that numbering anyway. And I'm stitching it all 1/1, and this is on what appears to be, again, 25 or 28 count linen. It is going to take me a while to get the border done. I do want to acknowledge this bit of stitching over here. This was me testing things out a little bit with a variegated blue that I have in my stash, and I was testing things out in terms of whether or not it would suit this particular piece and the type of fabric I was stitching on. And when I eventually get around to that part of the design and such, I'm going to have to frog it because I'm not going to continue. Oh, yeah, I won't continue stitching in that thread. It's a beautiful thread, and I think it's more suited to 14 count or lower. So, say 14 or 11, 10 count Ada, or even a canvas kind of fabric, if you can call canvas fabric. That I think is what would mostly suit this kind of thread. It is beautiful thread though. It has this really nice silky feel to it. And I have two other spools, which is a variegated purple and a multicolored thread as well. So I am looking forward to finding a chart that someone else has designed, or even designing something myself that will enable me to incorporate this thread a bit more and feature it heavily. I'll have to wait and see. But that's that. The next piece that I have to share with you is again one of my own designs, and it is based on a quote from Strictly Ballroom, and it's partly nicknamed Spanish proverb, and it is called "A life lived in fear is a life half lived." I don't remember what the Spanish wording is. If hopefully it is Spanish. If anyone here has watched the movie Strictly Ballroom, you will hopefully know what I mean. I strongly believe it is Spanish or a very similar culture, who do the Paso Doble and have similar dialects that go with those countries. And the character Fran, she at one stage gets very frustrated with the lead actor Scott, where he is afraid to go ahead and do a particular phrase in a dance for the Paso Doble that at that particular time was considered to be illegal in the dancing world, in especially the ballroom dancing world. And this is where she got frustrated with him, and in words of Spanish or something similar to that dialect, she pretty much said to him, "Look, a life lived in fear is a life half lived," saying that if you are afraid to take this particular step to actually do this phrase of dance in the Paso Doble, then you're always going to live in fear that that's what's going to hold you back. And I think that particular phrasing can be applied to any aspect of life. So without further ado, with all of that rambling, this is where I am at so far. I'm stitching this on 18 count Ada. I'm not sure exactly what color is associated with this fabric, but it I think is just what I had in mind when I had designed this piece, and I love stitching this. I've fallen in love with this chart. I love stitching on the 18 count piece, and it is going to take me a bit of time to do, because there is a bit of confetti stitching with the butterfly especially, but I think it's what makes it look so beautiful though, and well worth stitching. So again, this is my effort so far with A Life Half Lived. The next piece that I have to share with you is Fight Like a Girl by Tanya Amity, based on artwork by Elena Zhinedkova by memory. And this is a piece I know featured heavily throughout this year when I was doing the AFL stitching challenge. And this is roughly what it will look like. It's very dark at the moment. I don't know if I can get this in much closer without a bucket load of glare. So, with this particular piece, it is a bookshelf style chart, and it has all of the strong female characters from a variety of books, ranging from Wendy from Peter Pan through to Hermione from Harry Potter, through to the two female characters for uh, the witch's wardrobe. That's not quite the wording, and it's not bedroom broomstick stuff. Words I have forgotten, but what is it? The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe by C.S. Lewis. Okay, it's all good. Those are the wordings that I was trying to think of. Anyway, it has been a little while since I've worked on this piece. I am stitching this on 18 count navy blue Aida. This is where I am at so far. This this is going to be awesome when I'm done. It will have a bit of backstitch in it, but it will be worth it in the end, because as we see with anything that needs backstitch, when we're stitching it and it doesn't have the backstitch, and we then put the backstitch in, we then see it properly come to life, and it will be worth it in the end. Okay, the next piece that I have to share with you is it is another Haid, and this one I stopped, started, restarted, and all that jazz, because for starters, I wanted to try and get away from doing a whole heap of black stitching, partly because it's black, mostly because it's black. Anyway, this one by memory is The Reader, and it is based on artwork by Lisa Parker. This is roughly what it will look like when it's done. And I am denied about how I was approaching this project, because I had initially started this in the top left corner and then realized this is going to have a lot of black stitching. I then shifted over to some black fabric, started in the middle, and then the type of fabric that I was stitching on was not conducive to my style of stitching, and I was making too many mistakes with it because of the way that fabric is. And it sounds like a cop out to blame the fabric rather than blaming myself as a stitcher. So I take part responsibility, and it just wasn't working the way that I wanted. So I came back again, and then I'm still up on the top, but I've calculated roughly where the center is, because I wanted to find some kind of color. And I have. With the background, I decided that I wanted to do 10th stitch until I got down to where the cat is and the main exciting parts are for this piece. So this fabric is again the 25 count easy grid fabric, and the 10th stitch is using 3 strands of DMC thread, all of which are the called for colors. And I'm super happy with this decision, because I love the coverage that I'm getting out of this piece, and it'll work out in the end. It's just going to take me longer than I expected to get through it. Now, speaking of Hades and me umming and ahhing about 3/2, 1/1, and all that jazz, I am also working on his Master's Voice Mini, also based on artwork by Lisa Parker, charted by Heaven and Earth Designs. And this is roughly what it will look like when it's done. And I have started this time in the center. And again, as part of me fussing around, fiddling around, this is where I'm at so far. For the main theme or the center of this fabric, am stitching this 2/1, and then for the background, I'll eventually stitch it in 10 stitch using 3 strands, just because I want that coverage. And I'm stitching this on 25 count easy grid fabric. The squares are 10 by 10. The other fabric you just saw again is easy grid fabric, but it's 20 by 20 or thereabouts. The next piece that I have to share with you is one of my own designs for hot cross stitching, and it is the black and white rolled up daisy. And I have recently put some work into it, and we actually saw it in the last catch up that we did. This is roughly what it will look like when it's done. And I'm stitching this on 18 count black Ada. Nothing has changed since we last saw this piece. But this is where I'm at, and my plan for this piece is for it to heavily feature next year and have the aim of making significant progress on it, almost to the point of getting a finish if I can. I know that towards the end of the year, so this time next year, I may be burnt out with this piece because I've worked on it so long and so much. But if all goes well and I'm able to focus, and depending on my distraction levels and life, in theory, if I just want to do 25 and 25, so achieve 25,000 stitches because of the year 2025, if I just focus on that, I would need to put a minimum of 60 to 70 stitches in it. But if I'm wanting to get a finish with this piece, based on how many stitches I have left, my calculations, if I've done them correctly, say that I need to get a minimum of, I think it was 175 to 180 stitches per day if I stitch on it every day. That can be achievable in some cases, and there will be days where I'll be able to get even more stitches in because of weekends, holidays, and so forth. Wait and see, though. Wait and see. The next piece that I have to share with you, if I can get everything to work the way I need, is this one has 2 names, partly because when I was searching for this pattern, I used the phrasing as above, so below. And when I was searching the Heaven and Earth Designs website, it then came up with the following chart, and it is called Inner Works of Life. I may have also used the words Tree of Life, and this is roughly what it will look like when it's done. It's based on artwork by Stephanie Law. What I love with this particular chart as well is that it is the same, or if not very similar, artwork for a journal that I regularly use as well. So that was the additional appeal for this. This one will take a significant amount of time for me to finish, mostly because of the size. and this is where I'm at so far. I've chosen to start in the center of the fabric. This is on the 25 count easy grid fabric. The next piece that I have to share with you is a Black Needle Society piece, and I have temporarily misplaced the chart. I have no doubt that it's floating around my stitching space nearby. I just don't know where I've put it right now. Anyway, the point is, this is again one that featured in the last time we caught up. This is part of the Winter and Stars Hollow chart. That was the last installment of the four piece stitching installment, 4 piece stitching retreat uh, for the based on the Gilmore Girls. This I'm stitching on 28 count black linen. This is very similar fabric to what I was stitching on for the Haid called the Reader, and this was I think the same fabric where I had stitched in the center and I was stitching it 1/1, and due to the way this particular fabric is woven, I was struggling immensely with it. So what is making the biggest difference for this stitching is that I'm stitching it 2/2. I think that's helping me so much more than if I was stitching this 1/1. I've also chosen to stitch this on black fabric, mostly because during the Winter and Stars Hollow stitching retreat that finished in April this year, it was around Easter time. So it was even back in March, it was early this year, Easter. The point is, a lot of people who were working on this chart during the retreat were working on light colored fabric and were routinely complaining about stitching white on white or light colors on light colored fabric. And I took that on as feedback to say, don't stitch it on light colored fabric because I will come across similar challenges. There we go. My additional aim is to stitch the entire panel, so the 4 charts of Gilmore Girls that were charted by Black Needle Societies, specifically designed by Katie Landis, all in one row because I have done all other 3 pieces on individual fabrics with the initial thought of then piecing it together. That's not going to work very well because I've stitched 2 of the charts on the same type of fabric, which is fine. But the third one I stitched on slightly different fabric, slightly different count. Therefore, it's just a little bit taller as a result. Anyway, everything's going to be okay. I will figure out what I want to do with finishing those off. I haven't quite figured that one out yet. Anyway, moving on. The next piece that I have to share with you is a Country Threads chart. I'm stitching the Pelicans. This one featured heavily this year during the AFL Stitching Challenge because I had this associated with the team Sydney Swans, which is also the team that my boyfriend and I support and barrack for. The Swans. They won the premiership, but they lost the grand final, and it, as a fan, was disappointing, annoying, and frustrating. I won't go into it because I know I rambled on and grumbled about it several months ago, and I won't go over it again. Anyway, my point though is that I'm stitching pelicans, and I love pelicans as a bird. I am fascinated by them because they are such big birds, and yet when they fly, I am in awe and amazement of them because they are such big birds in terms of their body, let alone their wingspan. And I love that in order for them to fly, their bones are partly hollow. That is something that I read somewhere a long time ago or heard somewhere, and it is just a random thing that has stuck in my brain as a result. With all of that in mind, I am stitching this on 14 count Aida, and this is where I am at so far. I have not touched this piece since the AFL Stitching Challenge finished for the year. I am excited though that the fixture for AFL next year has recently been released. I haven't looked closely at it. I have seen some things in the news about what the first few games are going to be and who's playing and such. And I'm looking forward to seeing how next year rolls around. I'm also contemplating if I do the AFL Stitching Challenge next year, and I'm umming and ahhing about what that will look like stitching wise, and how I then share that with you in these types of episodes. So we'll wait and see. My big eventual plan, though, with the pelicans and more broadly speaking, the trawlers here and all of the other charts that I have in the country threads range that I am yet to stitch. The biggest plan that I have that I at the moment am excited to start working on, I want to make another quilt out of the country threads charts. This is something that I shared with people this year when I went to the JK stitching retreat, because the designer Fiona Jude was there and I wanted to share with her and some of the attendees the work that I put into that quilt, something that I am super proud of, and it took me quite a long time to do. I know that it on average took me about 3 months to finish each chart, because I was working full time, studying part time, and stitching when I could as a bit of downtime and such. These One of the things that I love with these charts is that they are super easy to stitch. Fiona, um, is an amazing designer, and what blew my mind when I was talking with her at the retreat was she actually, from memory, if I'm remembering the conversation correctly, doesn't actually cross stitch, or that's the impression that I got anyway. And her designs are based again on photos that she's taken or things that she's seen through her travels around the place, and her aim for all of the designs are to make them simple but still capture the essence of what each thing is in terms of the photograph, artwork, or whatever it is that she has seen. And that is something that blows my mind. I I just love her for it, in terms of love her creativity and artwork for it. With all of that in mind, I will stop gushing because I could probably gush over all of that quite a lot as well. Now, the next thing I have to share with you is one that I feel grumbles about, because I want to get it done, but it's just, it's a dimensions kit. This is why I'm reacting the way that I am. And I know that I reacted a similar way when I was talking about the barnyard kittens. So this is a dimensions gold kit, one that I bought many moons ago, and has been a very slow work in progress. This featured quite a lot in the stitching that I did for the AFL Stitching Challenge a couple of years ago. Actually, this year. It featured a bit this year. Sorry, because I remember that I was stitching this to do with the Geelong cats, and barnyard kittens should have been in place of the Four Seasons kittens, but I'd forgotten about barnyard kittens, which is why this one came into place. This is where I'm at so far. So as we can see, I have just a quarter to go, if nothing else. I'm using all of the called for threads. I'm using all of the fabric and everything that came in the kit. It is going to be a big celebration when this one is done. In theory, I should be able to get it done this time next year if I keep on the way that I am for stitching. I'm not going to make any promises. We'll wait and see. The next piece that I have to share with you is a heaven and earth design, and for once I actually have the printout of the cover page that is badly torn. It is based on artwork by Amy Stewart. It is called A Mini Stitch in Time, charted by Heaven and Earth Design. This is roughly what it will look like when it's done. And this is where I'm at so far. The next piece that I have to share with you is called Midnight Glow by Custom Crafts, designed by Diana Lair, based on artwork by Lucy Billaudieu / McCaw Graphics, copyright 2011. This one again featured in the last time we caught up. Nothing has changed since we caught up, and I'm stitching this on 14 count Aida, noting that I will need to add fabric at the top and at the bottom to help with the framing. I've probably mentioned this many times whenever I have shared this with you. This will hopefully be a focus piece for next year to get it done because I don't have much to go. Fingers crossed. The next piece that I have to share with you is, I want to say an anchor kit, but I believe that it's more a Luca S chart kit. I don't know. Anyway, I call this Trio of Dogs, and I am using all of the called for fabric, threads, and so forth. And this is where I am at so far. This, when I first started on this, and I know I've talked about this before, and I'll probably say it every time I share an update. This is the first time that I've worked on gridded fabric, and I had no idea what I was doing when I first started this. Hopefully it all works out okay. Wait and see. This is 14 count Aida though. Oh, actually, I think this needs to go in with so many threads floating around. It's all good though. The next piece that I have to share with you that I actually, in recent days, have been doing just a little bit more work on is called Zebras by Design Works. And I'm feeling a little bit stuck with this because I have screwed myself over. That's the best way I can put it. The It's something to do with how I've organized some of the threads on the special thing that came in the kit. The There are a variety of blues in this piece, which is fine. It is the naming of those blues and to then figure out, okay, well, what's dark blue, medium blue, light blue, which one is aqua, which one's medium grey, light blue, all the other wordings that go with it. It is doing my head in a little bit because I am actually getting to the stage where we are getting into the blues. And this is where I'm at so far. So my work has been predominantly focused around this area here, and I'm getting annoyed at myself for the way that I've organized some of the threads, and I feel like I need to reorganize them so I can make sure that I'm not getting two symbols confused as to which threads need to be associated with which symbol. I'll get there. This is being stitched on 14 count Aida. Again, if I wasn't having such an issue with the threads, I would be enjoying this a lot more. Again, it'll be okay. I'm just having a bit of a grumble moment. The next piece that I have to share with you is a Heaven and Earth Designs piece based on artwork by Jeff Haley called Scaredy Cats. And this is where I'm at so far. It has not changed at all since I did my last Halloween update. I'm stitching this on 25 count linen. It's going to be a big piece, but it will be worth it in the end. The next piece that I have to share with you again is a Heaven and Earth Designs piece, and it is called Midnight Glow. No, not Midnight Glow. I want to call it Midnight Glow, but it is a fairy piece. And I again want to attribute this to Stephanie Law, but the artist is Julie Fane. And I'm trying to find the cover page. Here we are. It is called Moonlit Waters Max Colors. This is roughly what it will look like when it's done. I still haven't quite fixed up the wings just yet because I know that last time we caught up, I was grumbling about the mistakes that I've made with the wings and that I'm wanting to try and get that fixed up before anything else. But this is where I'm at so far. Sorry, I'm just looking at some marks on the back of the fabric. I don't know where they came from. It's going to get washed. This is being stitched on 25 count even weave. The next piece that I have to share with you is a chart that's first for me in the sense that I've never stitched anything from unconventional cross stitch, and I'm excited with getting some progress on this. It's called Headless Horseman 2, and this is roughly what it'll look like when it's done. I've chosen to start in the center of the chart, which means that I'm working around where the breastplate is for the horse. And I'm stitching this on 25 count easy grid fabric, stitching 2/1 full cross. This is where I'm at so far. Not much more stitching has been done since the last spooky stitching update. The last piece that I have to share with you is a new start for this year. It's called Moons Out, Brooms Out by Autumn Lane Stitchery. And I'm stitching this on 18 count Ada. And, there we go. This is roughly what it will look like when it's done. And this is where I'm at so far. I'm using most of the called for colours. The yellow that we see on the broom, I got lazy and started using some variegated thread from Cottage Garden Threads, mostly because it was what I had on hand and it has a lot of the shades of yellow in it that I needed for the broom. So it's just me being lazy, and I thought, let's just see how we go with this, and it'll be all good. Now, that is it for all of the stitching in terms of my WIPs. And I think when I was initially jotting down a list of everything that I could remember for all the projects that I currently have in progress, I think the last count was about 33. It may have jumped up to about 34, maybe 35, because I think there might be at least one or two pieces that I forgot to add to the list, which I think is actually a really nice segue into the next episode for the stitching planner and such that I purchased. I did talk about it in the last episode that I had as a no plans November stitching. So until next time, thank you all so much for sticking around for this episode, and It was a long one, so I hope that you got a lot of stitching done and that you enjoyed seeing all of the different projects that are my works in progress, whether it be ones that you've seen me stitch throughout this year, if not in previous years as well. And I look forward to getting more progress done on these pieces, hopefully next year. Until next time, I hope that you enjoy all of your stitching time, that you're able to get progress on the pieces that you want progress on, and you enjoy any new stitching and starts that you have. Until next time, happy stitching, everyone.